In San Francisco, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up in the next hour, Amazon's next brick-and-mortar push. We are at the opening of the e-commerce giant's new 4-star store in New York. Plus, Masayoshi Son's big vision for tech funding is getting bigger. We'll hear what lies ahead for Softbank's $100 billion fund. And the high-profile creators of Instagram and WhatsApp have all left Facebook after reportedly clashing with Mark Zuckerberg. We'll discuss what's going on inside the social media giant. But first, to our top story, Amazon is continuing to push into brick and mortar, a trend most people would say the online giant nearly killed. Amazon opened a new store in New York City Thursday featuring top-selling and highly rated products. This is the online retailer's latest effort at physical stores, where most consumer spending still occurs. The store, named Amazon 4-Star, will feature devices, kitchen items, toys, books, and games. All products are items sold on Amazon that customers have rated 4 stars and above. For more, let's get to the event itself, where we are joined by Amazon Physical Retail Vice President Cameron Janes. Cameron, thank you so much for joining us. So Jeff Bezos has said he's only interested in going into brick and mortar if this store can differentiate itself. So what is uniquely different about this store?
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me. So what is uniquely different around Amazon 4-Star is that we've really built the store around our customers. It's a direct reflection of our customers, not just what they're buying, but really what they're loving. Everything in the store is rated 4 stars or above by our customers, is a top seller, or is new is trending on Amazon.com. So our goal is that customers can walk into this store, basically pick up anything, and know that it's going to be a great product because customers online have already said so.
That said, I've been into the bookstore, and, there's not that many books. Certainly not as many as you can get online. Why would people go to these stores when they can just order them on Amazon.com?
Well, certainly, whenever you're working offline, you can't have the endless aisle that you have online. And so when you're working offline, you really have to curate. And that's actually what Amazon 4-Star is all about. We have a highly curated selection from some of the top categories, the most popular categories on Amazon.com. So we've got devices, electronics, kitchen, toys, home, and all of these hit that 4-star selection bar that we think is so important. 4 stars or above rated by our customers, top selling or new or trending. And we have a team of curators whose job it is to pick those products from across Amazon.com, and that's what you want in a physical store. You want to be able to browse the aisles and really be able to discover great products, and that's exactly what you can do here.
So how do you see the bookstore, the gadget pop-up shops, Amazon Go, all really tying together? Is the objective to drive revenue? Is it about creating a deeper relationship with the customer?
Well, here with 4-Star, what we're trying to do is create an experience where customers can come in, browse, and have fun shopping and find products they love. In all of these experiences, what we're trying to do is find more ways to connect with our customers. We know, of course, customers love to shop online, but a lot of customers love to shop offline as well. And what we can do with these experiences is create, new type of shopping experiences, have them discover new products. Another thing you can do in offline retail that you can't do online is customers can come in and touch the products themselves. So certainly with our device selection, our device category, customers can come into the store, they can play with a Fire TV, they can read on a Kindle, they can interact with an Amazon Echo and Alexa products and see how those products work in first person. Those are growing categories, especially smart home. And here in store, you can literally try those products first person, get a feel for them, talk to an associate, and make a more confident buying purchase.
The idea, as I understand it, is that some of these physical stores could help maintain rapid revenue growth. Does that mean if you didn't open brick and mortar stores, you think that revenue growth would suffer, or are these purchases made here actually still going to be a drop in the bucket?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you broke up there on that one.
Talk to me about how much you think that these stores will actually drive revenue growth, because the goal is to maintain rapid revenue growth and brick and mortar being part of that. But do you think if you didn't do this, revenue growth would slow down? Is this just going to be a drop in the bucket, or is this going to be a significant driver?
Well, what our focus here is on connecting with customers. And if customers come in here and discover products that they love, we know they'll come back, and we think that over time can be something big. And that's really what we're focused on today.
Why not an Amazon 5-star store? Certainly you could fill it.
Right, of course. So even the most loved products are going to have some diversity of opinion on their product. So as soon as a customer rates a product 4 stars, that product is no longer a 5-star product. So anything that's rated 4 stars above, we believe generally is getting a very consistent thumbs up from customers. And when you look at this entire store, the average star rating here in this store is 4.4 stars. And collectively, we have about 1,800 products in the store, and they've earned 1.8 million 5-star reviews. So these are really high-quality products that our customers love.
How do you maintain the integrity of the review system, given that now you have chosen to showcase these products in a physical store? There's a selection process. There's a choice that Amazon is making there when there are, plenty of other products that, could certainly make the cut.
So certainly the integrity of our online review system is very important to Amazon overall. We have teams that are very focused on ensuring the integrity of that is maintained, and we rely on those same teams and those same systems to ensure that the products we bring in here and their ratings are legitimate and quality, and we stand behind our ratings on Amazon.com.
Amazon's obviously making a big push into devices. We just saw you unveil, some 70 voice-activated devices. How much of this is about getting Amazon devices in front of customers when they could see other devices at a Best Buy, for example?
Well, certainly here we carry Amazon devices and a lot more, but we love the fact that we're able to, with a physical store, customers can come in and interact directly with our devices, try them out, experience them in person. We think that's a great way to try out these products. And of course, our products in Amazon, many of them have great reviews. So I think the product with the most customer reviews in Amazon 4-star is actually the Fire TV Stick with Alexa voice remote. I believe it has something like 197,000 customer reviews, and it's rated 4.4 stars. So those are also great products that customers are fans of online, and we're excited to expose them to more customers here in store as well.
All right, Amazon Physical Stores Vice President Cameron James, thanks so much for stopping by. Coming up, Softbank CEO Masayoshi Son's hard-headed plans for his Vision Fund investing in tech startups. We have all the details next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio, listen on the Bloomberg app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. When Softbank CEO Masayoshi Son set out to create his Vision Fund to invest in tech startups, he set a bold target, $100 billion. He's nearly hit that, though the fund still hasn't officially closed, but it's already made substantial investments in companies like Uber, WeWork, Slack, and GM's Cruise. Now, the Japanese dealmaker says he's going to do it again. And again, every 2 to 3 years. In fact, he plans to raise another $100 billion. Bloomberg Tech's Selena Wang has just returned from Japan, where she spoke to Masayoshi Son along with a couple of our other Bloomberg colleagues. Selena, thank you so much for joining us. So what was this conversation like?
It was really fascinating because prior to this interview, we had done dozens and dozens of interviews with people very close to Masa, and everything we kept on hearing from his deputies was, this man has so much conviction, he's bolder than anybody else I know. And speaking to him, you really get that sense. What's really interesting is that initially, when he was coming up with the idea of this fund, he had thought 30 billion. But then on the plane over, right before they were going to pitch to one of their potential LPs, he changed that 30 to 100 billion. And when I asked him about this, he said, well, 100 is a simpler number, and we need that much capital every 2 to 3 years to keep up the momentum.
That's it. He hasn't hit the target yet. And how does he plan to do this every couple of years?
He hasn't hit the target yet. They're very close to closing. They're almost at $100 billion. They've had a very vast array of these Middle Eastern wealth funds. They've had very established companies invest, and he believes that with the IRR, the internal rate of return that he's able to achieve, these investors are going to want to continue to deploy their capital. But he really doesn't see his fund as a traditional venture fund. He truly believes that through his investments, he's accelerating the next revolution of artificial intelligence, which he believes is similar to the revolution that happened 20 years ago with the internet.
That said, you've got venture capital firms, traditional venture capital firms breaking up in part because of the new competition. Kleiner Perkins is splitting the growth fund off from the rest of the fund. You've also got other funds like Sequoia trying to keep up. And we've interviewed plenty of venture capitalists on the show who say, the landscape has completely changed. There's so much money out there. What does he have to say about some of the criticism?
He's pretty unruffled by the criticism. He says, VCs can say whatever they want to say. I have total respect for them, but I'm trying to do something different. But you're absolutely right. I mean, when you speak to venture capitalists on background, they are not shy at all about complaining about Softbank. Some of them call them a bully, that they're just stuffing wads of cash into entrepreneurs. They complain that they're raising valuations. I mean, this isn't the first time that venture capitalists have had to deal with an influx of money at the later stages. They've had hedge funds, mutual funds, foreign money, but the sheer size and scale of what Softbank doing is rather frightening to a lot of them.
You also wonder, is it good net for the technological revolution to be driven by one person or one fund with one set of views?
Absolutely. I mean, this fund is only a year old, and they've already deployed $65 billion of capital. And he's hired these 9 managing partners under him. And I know he wants to increase that number, but for now, there are only 9. And it's worth mentioning that they are all men. They say that they're trying to find women to add to it, but yes, it is all men. They have not traditional technology or venture capital backgrounds. A lot of them are actually made their name in the banking world. Rajiv Misra, who leads the fund, he made his name at Deutsche, at UBS. He met Masa a decade ago. He helped restructure the Sprint deal. So it really has yet to be seen what the final outcome of this is going to be.
What about the succession plans? He had Nikesh Arora, who was supposed to succeed him, and then it sounded like he changed his mind.
Yes.
And who is in position to succeed him, if anyone?
We certainly spent some time pressing him on this very point. We mentioned you're good friends with Jack Ma. He's made the decision to retire a little bit early. And his response was, hey, I'm great friends with Jack Ma. We still meet up every month. We talk about life, about business, and he's got his own style and I have my own style. So he says he wants to stay until he's 69 years old. And at that time, he used the metaphor passing the baton. And he says when he passes the baton, they're both going to be accelerating and it's going to be so seamless you won't even notice the race has stopped.
So that's how many more years?
So he's 61 right now, so he has several more years. He says he hasn't chosen a successor, but he does say that even when he retires, he's still going to be chairman of the board, so he's not going anywhere. He's going to have his hands full for a very long time.
How are investors here in Silicon Valley going to adapt to this? I mean, how much will this just change the territory that startups and investors are operating in?
You know, for a long time, it was like Sand Hill Road is where all great startups go, and now, you know, they're not the only option. Now all roads eventually lead to Softbank. They're not getting in, you know, Series A, C deals, but they are, if there's any company that's looking to raise in the billions, hundreds of millions of dollars of range, they all need to look at Softbank. And as you mentioned before, funds like Sequoia, many established venture funds, they're having to raise bigger and bigger wads of money to be able to compete and to be able to continue to have an equity stake in their company as they get larger and larger.
All right, Selena Wang, just back from Tokyo. Thank you so much for sharing that interview with us. You can check out Selena's story in this week's edition of Bloomberg Business Week. Definitely worth a read. Coming up, Darktrace says it is the first cybersecurity company born in AI. But as attackers get stealthier, will they begin using AI too? We'll discuss next. And Bloomberg Technology is live streaming on Twitter. You can check us out at Technology, and be sure to follow our Global Breaking News Network TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg. The cybersecurity startup Darktrace refers to its technology as an immune system. Inspired by the self-learning intelligence of the human body, its enterprise system uses AI and machine learning to identify and tackle threats to a company's network. Now, with the increasing scrutiny on data use and cybersecurity, its user base has expanded to over 7,000 networks around the world. Today, Darktrace has raised $50 million in Series E funding, bringing its valuation to $1.65 billion. Here to tell us more, we've got CEO Nicole Egan. Nicole, thank you so much for being here. So you say your founders are former British intelligence agents. You've also teamed up with Cambridge mathematicians. There are so many cybersecurity startups. What sets yours apart?
Well, I think what makes us really unique is we can actually install in mere minutes and actually start providing value right away. In fact, our artificial intelligence not only detects the threats inside networks, but we do this really unique thing, which is actually have the machines fight back, have it contain the attacks in mere seconds.
How is that different from what others are doing?
Well, I think when you look at the broader AI market, there's a lot of people providing out there what I'd say are Lego toolkits, where you have to take your very rare and very few AI experts and build things yourself. In our case, we've already pre-built it. It's an easily deployed application.
So talk to us about the biggest attacks you are seeing on big business networks. Where are they coming from, and don't they use AI too?
So I think the thing that's really changed, that you used to hear about the hacker in the college dorm room or the high school student, and those days are long gone. Now what you hear about are nation states pairing up with organized cyber criminal rings. And we start to see now early signs that they're building arsenals of AI-style attacks. What this means is the whole industry could change overnight, and the legacy tools that companies have been using could really become obsolete.
These kinds of attacks are plaguing everyone from individuals to businesses. We've been listening to these hearings on the Supreme Court nominee and Christine Blasey Ford talking about being personally hacked. Her emails hacked and rewritten to be made as if she was recanting her testimony. How does what happens to an individual differ from what happens at a business and a corporate level?
Well, I think what we're starting to see now is everything's being connected to the internet. So it's everything from autonomous vehicles to we heard about Amazon with their microwave oven. And what it means is this is everywhere. It's in our businesses and it's in our homes. And these type of attacks can really hit through, let's say, anyone's email box.
Mm-hmm. So, why are they so hard to fight? I mean, what makes your ability to fight this any better than their ability to thwart systems like yours?
Well, it's a great question, in that this is fast becoming a war of algorithms. So it's going to be machine learning against machine learning, AI against AI. And one of the advantages we have is we've been deployed now for over 5 years in thousands of networks. And we've learned what's normal for every person and every device connected in those companies. That really builds up a very strong defense, similar to the human body's immune system.
Could what you have, your technology, could it help Facebook prevent Russians from meddling in the U.S. election?
Well, I think what we can do is we can learn what's going on. We can watch everything that's happening in a company, and from that we can extract valuable information. So it can be used not only for security, this could be used actually for everything from compliance to actually understanding how to help companies maybe get more productivity out of employees.
So when you say the tech is like an immune system, what does that actually mean?
So when you think about our human bodies, we have skin, and that skin keeps us quite safe. But occasionally there's still a bacteria virus that gets inside. And what the immune system does is it has a very fast and precise response. That's exactly how Darktrace's AI works. We deploy inside a company or inside a cloud, and very quickly we can tell when something's not normal. Maybe it's an attacker who took over someone's identity, or maybe it's an employee who's gone a little bit rogue, or maybe made an error that exposed the network. So our software will detect that and automatically respond to contain the attack.
Where are the biggest threats coming from that you're seeing? Is it nation states? Is it Russia? Is it Iran? Is it North Korea?
So definitely it's a combination of the state-sponsored attacks with the organized cyber criminal rings.
From
that
where?
Combination. It's around the world, and I think what's worrying is there's a lot of countries investing a lot in artificial intelligence, and while most of that AI can be for good, there's also an element where it can be for harm.
Have you seen an uptick in attacks with the Trump administration, the America First mentality, and potentially alienating some allies?
Well, I think we will start to see, for example, with an America First agenda where it's trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States, all of a sudden we start to see an uptick in maybe attacks on manufacturing plant floors. And some of those systems are older, they're proprietary, they've been around a long time. Those are harder to really guard against. So we're seeing the need to protect manufacturing plants, transit systems, water supply, things that maybe we haven't always thought about protecting.
Have you seen increasing threats from China?
We see it across the board, quite frankly, so I don't know that one particular country right now stands out. I think we always have to guard against things like intellectual property against really everyone.
So so let's look at the next year. We've got an election, we've got a trade war. What do you expect to happen in terms of the kinds of attacks, the severity of attacks over the next 12 months?
I think we will start to see them get more what we call low and slow, silent and stealthy. And what's hard about that, it makes it harder for human security teams to actually defend against those. So we'll see an uptick, I think, in companies starting to deploy artificial intelligence to augment the people in their teams.
What kind of companies are using your technology?
It really is across the board, across all different sectors. So it started very strong in financial services, and still today about 20% of our customers are in financial services. But it could be a 10-person hedge fund as well as a global bank. But we are seeing technology, telecommunications, industrial control systems, retail, e-commerce. It's really, no one's immune from these attacks.
All right, Nicole Egan, CEO of Darktrace, thanks so much for joining us. Coming up next, trouble for Facebook? Are these high-profile executive exits a sign of trouble? Or will Zuckerberg's big bet on VR be their next big hit? We'll discuss. And after that, Google and Apple have felt the wrath of the EU with record fines. Is Amazon next in line to join them? This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. Before the founders of Instagram surprise resignation Monday, there was Brian Acton. Acton is the co-founder of the popular messaging app WhatsApp, the company that Facebook acquired for $19 billion back in 2014. Acton left the company last year. He said he was starting a nonprofit. Later, the other co-founder of WhatsApp, Jan Koum, also left. But Acton hasn't kept quiet. He tried to start a hashtag delete Facebook movement on Twitter. And in an interview with Forbes on Wednesday, he spoke out about the disagreements he had with Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and COO Sheryl Sandberg about the direction Facebook wanted WhatsApp to take, saying they're business people. They're good business people. They just represent a set of business practices, principles, and ethics that I don't necessarily agree with. That didn't sit well with Facebook exec David Marcus, who wrote in a Facebook post, "Call me old-fashioned, but I find attacking the people and company that made you a billionaire and went to an unprecedented extent to shield and accommodate you for years low class. It's actually a whole new standard of low class." Beyond a simple war of words, all of this begs the question, what is going on with these high-profile creators leaving Facebook? To help answer that question, we've got Techonomy Editor-in-Chief David Kirkpatrick with us in Chicago, and here in the studio, Bloomberg Intelligence's senior analyst, Jitendra Walwal. David, I want to start with you. First, to put this into context, David Marcus had been running Facebook Messenger for a very long time, which was sort of an in-house competitor to WhatsApp, so surely was very familiar with some of the interactions going on with the founders of WhatsApp and with Zuckerberg and the attempts to turn WhatsApp into a revenue-generating business. But what do you make of this all happening in public?
Well, it is significant that David Marcus is the person who spoke out. He really is one of the most senior people there, one of the best respected people there. I find it pretty sordid, to be honest. I think the full story of what happened with the Instagram co-founders will come out over time, most likely. I think it's interesting that Acton spoke so bluntly and also said in that article in Forbes that he had refused to sign an NDA as part of his exit agreement, which is what allows him to say these things. He is clearly very critical of the way they conduct their business, and That's not appealing. I will say, on the other hand, for founders of companies that are required to leave, it's not unusual, and that in itself should not raise huge alarms, in my opinion.
That said, for founders of companies to leave the company that bought them and then say, delete Facebook, that is a big deal. And when we saw the Instagram co-founders leave Facebook as well, you see in Kevin Systrom's statement nothing about Mark Zuckerberg. No kind words. Reading between the lines, it certainly seems like something is not right between them. And our reporting also tells us that they weren't happy.
That all seems right. And additionally, I would say the fact that in the Forbes interview, Hackton says, if it makes money, they'll do it, or some quote to that effect, that is a very damning criticism, which unfortunately I think there is some evidence for. And if you were to look at the problems Facebook has today, which I consider quite grave, to be honest, many of them I think probably flow from a culture which, for whatever reason, began to prioritize making profit and growing profit over a lot of other values that now they are belatedly recognizing they should have prioritized.
Jitendra, you wonder if some of these internal dynamics are why WhatsApp has been slow to transform into a revenue-generating business. And though Instagram has showed tremendous growth, why it didn't grow faster?
Yeah, so that's what it really does. It sort of delays monetization, it creates execution risk. And if you look at the core Facebook platform, which is slowing in terms of growth rate, so Instagram needs to step up. They need to figure out WhatsApp and Messenger monetization. So execution risk really put the near-term growth at risk. But having said that, if you actually look at the opportunities that Instagram really has, based on where they are right now, in live stories, in e-commerce and things like that, it's a very critical platform for Facebook. And given that they are being cautious with the core Facebook platform with content, hopefully they don't change the flavor a lot more that users get annoyed.
David, I wonder right now how much we need to be concerned about the brands, the Instagram brand, the WhatsApp brand, and the Facebook brand, which is increasingly not necessarily holding up to scrutiny and trust.
Well, it's a great question. Primarily, as Jitendra suggested, and I think you just implied, the Facebook brand itself is quite sullied at the moment. The Instagram brand, by contrast, is superb, very highly burnished. They have extraordinarily satisfied customers and not a strong feeling of having aired or, caused big problems for their users or society. So it is very much incumbent on Facebook, regardless of who runs Instagram going forward, that they keep it very much in the same spirit and with a similar product to what it's had up to now.
Jitendra, I want to talk about another company that Facebook bought, Oculus. Those founders have also left Facebook. But Facebook charging forward, they just unveiled a new Oculus product. Is AR and VR going to turn out to be the big, bright future that Zuckerberg hoped, despite some of these internal personnel issues?
Longer term, yes. Right now, the product is really evolving. There are a lot of hard challenges technology-wise that they have to solve. But the Quest, I think it's a promising product if they can get behind the content, because it's very accessible, $399 price point. It doesn't need systems to run it and things like that. So this is an evolutionary product that you will see the timeline to be, a couple of years down the line, especially in Mark Zuckerberg's own timeline, the plan that they have. VR stands at the 10-year horizon because of that. So I think
10 years VR will be mainstream. Is that what they're saying?
That's what they're hoping.
Is that what Jitendra Rawal is saying?
Basically, I feel that until some of these challenges are really resolved, mainstream adoption is gonna be lagging. But with the Quest, if they get behind the content, remember it's similar to how Xbox had Halo behind it and things like that. If they can target some of these markets, education, enterprise, and of course gaming, which has gained a lot of traction with Oculus Rift right now. Longer term, they're building a good foundation. But financial impact, it'll be more on expenses for the next couple of years than really revenue. But this is a long-term bet that I believe it will pay off in the long term. But the timeline, you cannot expect it to work wonders near term.
All right, Jitendra Rawal, Bloomberg Intelligence. David Kirkpatrick, as always, founder of Techonomy. David, thanks so much for joining us. Meantime, the woman who is one of the people big tech fears the most wants to make sure Amazon isn't stifling competition using the massive amounts of data that it collects. Take a listen to what the European Union's Competition Commissioner, Margaret Vestager, said in an interview at the Bloomberg Global Business Forum in New York on Wednesday.
They're also a big guy themselves. Bookstore, everything. Groceries, movies, the works. And they, of course, get all the data from the little guy, and we want to understand how this data is being used.
Margaret Vestager there speaking with our editor-in-chief, John Micklethwaite, in Washington to tell us more about Vestager's plans for making sure big tech plays fair. Aoife White, who covers EU antitrust for Bloomberg and is usually based in Brussels. So, Aoife, which way are the winds blowing here? Is Amazon going to have to pay a big fine like Google did?
We don't know yet. This is early days. I mean, Vestager was very careful to say that they're just looking at what Amazon is doing. Amazon's a platform. Amazon competes with and also offers a place for these smaller sellers to put their products out to the world. We had a little more detail in a story we just put out today, saying, for example, that they're going to look at how products that Amazon sells itself, like Amazon Basics, how those work against small sellers, basically how it works, how things compete online on Amazon's platform. Are they playing fair or not?
Well, we don't know yet about what kind of penalty there might be if there is a penalty, but what are the chances that Amazon could be forced to change its business practices in the EU, especially given that Google has been ordered to do so as well?
Well, as I said, because we're in the early stages of this, we're waiting to see whether there are big problems that the EU thinks it needs to jump on. If it does, it'll open another probe, and at that point, the risks become higher. You can see then they feel that there's something going wrong there, that there's something that they need to investigate. And at that point, we're on the fine track. You look at what precise market they're looking at. It's very hard to assess any kind of potential fine right now. I mean, if you're looking at with the Google fine, for example, they picked a small market, but because it was European-wide, the fines really rolled up. I mean, we were looking at 6.7 billion euros. I mean, there was one fine this summer already, $5 billion. So these things can roll and become very big, but we're not quite on that track right now with Amazon.
President Trump has not been shy about his feelings about Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos and tangentially Amazon itself. What are the chances that the scrutiny in Europe could spread to the United States?
I think that's really a question for the U.S. I mean, the market shares that some of these companies have, Google in particular in Europe, are much higher. So there is more competition in search. So in some ways, some of these issues are specific to Europe, and the behavior that the EU will look at are European issues. But yes, I can definitely see in the U.S. there's a lot of interest in what the EU is doing. I mean, America is the home of antitrust, and it's interesting to see how these cases are going on slightly separate tracks, that the EU is jumping on these problems, and the U.S. so far hasn't. Doesn't mean it won't, but it's just interesting to see what your neighbors are doing sometimes. Why are they going down that path? And when we see Vestager speaking here in Washington or in New York, she's very much trying to explain why she wants to take these cases. And that's a message that some people might pick up on.
Right. She does an awful lot of interviews with U.S. media. She travels here a lot. Bloomberg's Aoife White, thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, the sustainable benefits of vertical farming are undeniable. But what does the new tech mean for farm laborers? We're going to take a look at how sustainable tech is changing tomorrow's jobs. This is Bloomberg. By 2050, the global population is expected to grow to 9.8 billion, and 2/3 will live in cities. With a growing population and limited resources, sustainable food production is needed more than ever. That's where vertical farming comes in. Indoor farms can transform industrial arable land into crop caches using less space, water, and pesticides. But while the technology is environmentally friendly, what does it mean for farm laborers? Bloomberg's Aki Ito investigates.
It might look like we're inside a spaceship, but this is actually a farm. The crops here are grown mostly by machines with the help of just a few humans, like this woman. Her life offers an early peek at a new kind of farming. It's a promising twist to an ancient career, but only if the robots don't replace her altogether.
My name is Katie Morich, and I'm a vertical farmer.
Katie works for a 3-year-old startup called Bowery. Its farm is here, in this industrial park in New Jersey.
How are you?
It's the last place you'd expect to find any sign of life. Step inside and you'll see a cross between a factory and a lab. Trays of produce are vertically stacked to save space, and each of them is given just the right amount of light, water, and nutrients at the optimal temperature and humidity. It's an incredible level of precision, which is why Katie can grow more faster with less water and no pesticides.
What's this?
This is the sorrel. That tastes like candy apple.
Whoa! It's so sour.
I know.
The majority of this facility is automated. The data is collected by sensors, and a computer controls growing conditions for the crops. For the things that the machines can't do yet, Katie and her fellow human farmers fill in. And even those tasks are dictated by the software that runs this whole operation.
It lets me know what I have to do, what time I should be doing it by, and that's how I get my day done.
After a full day at the farm, Katie likes to bring home samples to her husband, Jace, and her cat, Burton. On the menu are 2 items from Katie's farm: basil for pesto pasta,
That's so good.
and mixed greens for a salad.
I'm terrified. Everyone's judging. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Katie fell in love with environmental science in college, but after graduating, she struggled to find a full-time career in the field.
Jace had to deal with me a lot. You know, coming home to me crying and trying to figure out if I'm making the right decisions. And then somehow online Bowery popped up.
She told me about this job, like Bowery farming. It's like an indoor vertical farm, and I was like, all right, this sounds like total BS. So I took my work truck and I said, you know what, let me swing around and see what this is all about. So I drove up to it. Doesn't look like there's a farm in there at all.
But I figured I'd go and check it out for myself. And I pulled up and it was exactly as how he described, but I gave it a shot.
And so in 2017, Katie joined Bowery. She became employee number 9. Bowery is backed by some of Silicon Valley's top investors. And with almost $30 million of funding, the startup is expanding fast. And in May, Katie got promoted to lead a team of her own farmers. The world's population is set to reach 9.8 billion people by 2050. 2/3 will live in cities. And we're gonna need all kinds of new technology to sustainably feed everyone. The key to making that food affordable is to continue to make more with fewer farmers. But no matter how high-tech all this gets, Katie thinks there will still be a place for her.
I just think there's something about the human mind that you can't really replicate. So I think we could still work closely with technology, but I still think it's nice, you know, to have a human there. It's also be pretty lonely for the robots if they don't have anybody to talk to.
That was Bloomberg's Aki Ito at Bowery Farms. Coming up, we look to the future of flight. Silicon Valley startup Skyrise's founder is here to talk about his plans for an autonomous flying future. This is Bloomberg. There's a growing debate on when flying taxis will be coming to cities. Some say it's just around the corner. Others believe regulation means it's still a ways off. Skyrise believes self-flying aircraft should become mainstream even before autonomous cars. The Silicon Valley startup intends to outfit helicopters with hardware and software to incrementally allow for the capability of autonomous flight. And the first step in their plan is a flying EMS service that could eventually fly without pilots. But that's just the beginning. Here to discuss, Skyrise CEO and co-founder Mark Groden. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. So rather than building self-flying aircraft from scratch, like let's say what Uber is doing, you are trying to outfit already existing aircraft with the technology to fly on its own, correct?
Yeah, we're an air mobility company on a mission to connect people in places that matter most. And kind of taking a step back and looking at the broader problem just for a moment, we've seen a lot of technical advances help us connect better virtually, but not a lot has helped us connect people in a physical sense for many, many decades. And so for us, we think that future of being more connected in a physical capacity come a lot sooner and doesn't require electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft.
So you're working on helicopters. Talk to us about what you've accomplished so far.
Yeah, we launched Skyrise EMS service, which enables a helicopter to fly to the scene of an emergency much faster than any ground-based mode of transportation, like an ambulance or something else.
But a helicopter can't, pull up in front of somebody's house on a residential street.
That's true in most cases, but there are a lot of more rural areas where we can set down and get very close to the scene of an emergency. There's also really high value in getting first responders over the scene so they can better assess what's actually happening and then decide how to dispatch like a fire engine or other services.
Now, in your vision, do these autonomous aircraft still have pilots?
Yeah, I think the kind of the right analogy to look at is like the self-driving car space. So it's kind of an incremental technology progression where you start off with the driver in the driver's seat, the technology is helping the driver do better, kind of an advanced pilot assistance system, if you will. And over time, the technology starts doing more and more, and then one day it becomes possible from a technical standpoint to pull the pilot out of the aircraft. But other things have to come to fruition to make that possible, like the public has to become comfortable with self-flying aircraft, and the regulatory body has to come along as well.
You think self-flying aircraft comes faster than self-driving cars? Why?
Yeah, I think when we're talking about self-driving, we're talking about a car that doesn't have a steering wheel and no driver inside of it. And the interesting thing about that is, if we were to build a city from scratch today, we could have self-driving cars without drivers inside them this very moment. But the reality of that technology problem is we're integrating self-driving cars into existing infrastructure with cars that are being driven by people on the road. And that's a very fundamentally difficult technical problem. Whereas in the sky, there's not a lot going on up there. It's kind of a blank canvas. So today, we can start building the transportation network of the future.
You also think self-driving cars will create more problems than they solve. Explain that.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that are working on wheeled vehicles, and they do a really good job of moving us somewhere between 0 and 10 miles. But the reality is they're kind of all constricted to this infrastructure. And infrastructure, roadways, sidewalks, et cetera, that has fixed throughput. And they'll do a really good job of maximizing the utilization of that infrastructure. But ultimately, it's fixed, it's going to become saturated, and it doesn't do a great job of getting more people further distances. And
so what are the challenges and the air blocks, if you will, of doing this in the air?
Yeah, there's definitely a regulatory and public perception component that we have to nail. And from a statistical sense, we have to prove that the technology is safe, both to ourselves and everyone else. So we're building the building blocks now to enable that technology to be possible. But we need the regulatory body and we need the public to be on board as well.
What are the technological hurdles that you have to overcome?
Yeah, so the air transportation, commercial air transportation today is one of the safest modes of transportation. You can say that you can fly 1 billion hours before you experience any type of incident. And getting to that level of reliability is what we're aimed at. We're aiming to make the most reliable form of transportation, period. And so there's definitely a technical path, to get there, but it takes time and it takes proof. And so I believe that our technology is better suited to do that than a lot of technology is for self-driving cars. But it's not something that happens overnight.
All right, Skyrise CEO and co-founder Mark Groden, thank you so much for stopping by, flying by. Appreciate it. That does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Tomorrow on the show, BlackBerry CEO John Chen. Don't miss the conversation. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco, and this is Bloomberg.